All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Jenna Wood, and I am one of the dietitians here with the Giant Company. I always say I'm excited about our topics, but I'm ultra excited today. If you don't know, I love talking about pasta. I love eating pasta in almost every shape and size. I just spent some time in Little Italy in San Diego, and we had pasta for almost every meal. Again, I love pasta. It is pasta month. I didn't realize October was pasta month until we were preparing for this. So definitely a perfect time to talk about pasta. I will say again, this is something super exciting for me. If you ever notice, and you can see in my picture here, I'm almost always wearing my rigatoni necklace. So I wear a lot of jewelry that has pasta. My shirt, I don't know if you can tell, but has a lot of pasta shapes. So a lot of clothing I have has pasta or food on it, but I found this one for for today's class. So let us dive in to talk all things pasta. All right, pasta month. So we're going to start with some pasta fun facts. I have some polls so we can kind of learn about how we all like pasta because it is such a versatile food. So first, the word pasta actually comes from the Italian word for paste because it is kind of just a combination of flour and water. So that is kind of where the word comes from. I thought this was a fun statistic. So the average Italian eats over 51 pounds of pasta every year, so like almost a pound a week. And the average American or North American eats about 15 to 20. So while we may feel like we eat a lot, and granted, I am probably way closer to that Italian because I grew up with an Italian family, Americans don't eat quite as much as we think they do. Most dried pastas are made with only two ingredients. So again, that semolina flour, you may see durum wheat as another name. They're the same thing, and water. So if you even really consider water an ingredient sometimes. Some varieties, of course, of dried, but also typically fresh pastas will also have egg. So if you have an egg allergy or you're just looking out, you want a vegan product, just knowing some products, dried and definitely fresh, may have egg. And this Saturday, October 25th, is World Pasta Day. So make sure you go onto our Savory website, or I have some recipe inspiration later on. You make a pasta dish this Saturday to celebrate. Now, this is something as a dietitian, as a lover of pasta, this can be real sad talking about serving sizes and what an actual serving size is. If you've ever looked at a box of pasta and it says like serves 8 people, I never realized I am close to a family of 8, but you never know. So, what is actually a serving of pasta? And it's kind of hard. Pasta boxes don't make it very easy to decipher what a serving is. So the links at the bottom, one goes to Barilla's website where they do have some helpful guides because of course it's going to depend on the shape of the pasta. But the recommended serving size, and of course we are all different sizes with different needs, so your, portion you want to eat might be different, but the recommended serving size is 2 ounces of dried pasta or 56 grams. So again, this is the dried, uncooked as it is in the box. But a lot of us, at least here in the United States, we don't do a lot of weighing of our ingredients. So if you don't have a food scale, which if you do have a food scale and you want to be really precise, maybe pasta is a food you overeat, maybe you do want to be weighing your servings. However, what does this look like in our measurements? So again, you can weigh it or you can estimate. So for some of those smaller pastas like macaroni and rotini, you would measure about a half a cup. Again, it's going to kind of depend. There's a lot of air in there, which is why it's about a half a cup. That is that 2 ounce serving. And pasta, since we're cooking it in water, it will expand and it will be bigger, of course, than that dried version. Farfalle, rigatoni, again, my favorite personal shape, and medium shells, that's about 3/4 of a cup dried. And this is where it gets tricky because you really can't measure the long pastas in a cup when they are dried. So on the Barilla website, they mention things like fettuccine, linguine, spaghetti. It's 2 1/8 inch circumference, which I haven't taken math like that in a while. So like trying to visualize what that is. can be a little tricky, but that is technically. So there are things like this. If you've seen, there are little measurement tools to help you determine what a serving size is. So again, if you like to eat a lot of long strand pasta and you want a portion, they do sell those type of measuring tools. And then things like orzo or pastina, which are teeny tiny little pastas, the serving would be a third of a cup because it fits more. There's not as much air in between all those pasta noodles. So that is what a dry cup would be for a serving. This typically equals about a cup cooked. Again, we're adding water. The calories will be the same because we're just adding water, but of course it expands. Then you can typically measure in a measuring cup. So let's say you cook the pasta already and you want to measure a cup for a serving. A cup is the serving. And again, this is approximate because they're all a little different, but also about the size of your clenched fist is about the serving of one, serving of pasta. So if you're serving yourself some pasta on a plate, if it's about the size of your fist, that is about a serving, which is nutrition wise about 200 calories, which for most people can fit into their day. Of course, that's why when we start to get big and big portions of pasta, the calories do add up if only a cup is about 200 calories. Now, there are so many different types of pastas, and I will talk through each of these, but each of them have nutritional benefits, including white pasta. So, white or refined pastas, because of the type of flour that is used, they are fortified with a lot of vitamins and minerals because a lot of people are eating this type of pasta, so it's important to fortify it. So, three major B vitamins. So, B vitamins are really helpful. You'll hear about them with energy. It actually helps our bodies create energy. So, there's a part of a system where those B vitamins are utilized. So, things like thiamine, niacin, and riboflavin. Pastas will also have iron, which is really great. A lot of grains will. And then folic acid. And I think my next bullet point, yeah. In fact, enriched pastas, so like a white pasta, is going to have 6 times the amount of folic acid of a whole wheat pasta. Whole wheat pasta will still have folate, which isn't always as readily absorbed by some people. And folic acid is actually the version of folate that has been studied a lot for brain development, when we are in utero. So, super important nutrients that we get from white pasta. Of course, plain pasta, which doesn't have egg. If it has egg, it'll still technically have a little fat, but plain, white pasta in a box is going to be a low sodium food and a fat-free food. Actually, and this would also include whole wheat, but whole wheat might have a smidge of fat because the whole grain has a little bit of healthy fat in there too. Of course, there are gluten-free options for pastas, and I will say the versions and the quality of gluten-free pastas have really gotten a lot better over recent years. So if you need a gluten-free option, there are certainly a lot of options now. And of course, pasta, like most people, yes, you might be eating buttered noodles from time to time, but pasta is really a great blank canvas for vegetables and protein and just adding other foods. And that's what a lot of our recipes and savory showcase, that you have the pasta, but you're adding all of these healthy foods to it too. So to continue, so these were some studies that I thought were interesting. People who eat pasta regularly had a greater intake of key nutrients like folate, like I mentioned, or folic acid, iron, magnesium, dietary fiber, and vitamin E. So vitamin E, especially in those whole grain and whole wheat pastas, is going to be a lot higher because there's some vitamin E in whole grains. But these are great nutrients that a lot of people miss out on. So not a bad thing. Again, we think of pasta as being this indulgent food, and certainly it can be depending on what we're adding, but people who eat pasta tend to have a more well-rounded diet. People who eat pasta, so pasta eaters, I'm a pasta eater, typically have a higher consumption of vegetables compared to non-pasta eaters. So again, another food category that a lot of people miss out on. I went to a produce conference last week and they're like, fruit consumption is up, but veggies are still down. So pasta can be a really great way to add in some vegetables. And I've noticed I have not asked any of my polls, so I want to ask some polls. So let us see. I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to launch this one. This is going to ask, what is your go-to pasta shape? So we talked about like long strand and little shapes. Maybe you love, so there's other, maybe it's lasagna, tons of different shapes out there. But yeah, absolutely. Long pasta, which can be things like spaghetti, fettuccine, linguine, and of course they all vary in terms of how thick they are. Penne or rigatoni, which I do love my rigatoni, but if I had to pick on this list, I'm actually a long strand pasta. Those are my favorites. Rotini or fusilli, there's a lot of different like curly pastas. There's a million other varieties. Macaroni or shells, and then again that other. I'm going to end the poll, share the results. A lot of people are with me that they like those long strand pastas. I think they're just fun to eat, really versatile. But of course, the rest of them, depending on what you're making, they might make more sense for what you're eating. But yeah, all pasta is great. So then I'm also going to share, actually, I'll share the next one on the next slide. Let's keep going. Now, this is about cooking methods and how long we cook them. So, al dente, which you've probably heard that concept or that term before when it comes to pasta, but al dente really means kind of not undercooking, but cooking slightly less than maybe even the box says to, or in that, sometimes it'll have cook 8 to 11 minutes. You want to cook more in that 8 range. That's going to be the al dente form. Al dente typically means so dente being teeth in Italian. So you kind of want a little bit of a chew. You don't want it to be undercooked, but you want it to be not overcooked. So not only is it, it's a better pasta experience than overcooking the pasta, it typically keeps you fuller longer because our bodies have to do a little bit more work to digest that pasta than if you were to overcook it. We're kind of doing more of our stomach's work in that way. So if you cook your pasta a little less, it's going to be a better eating experience, but it also keeps you fuller longer, which is definitely a great, we don't want to be hungry right after our meals. So cooking it a little less is a great option, especially if you're going to reheat the pasta again another time. And one thing that's kind of coming out more and more that we're learning about is the concept of cooking and cooling your pasta. Of course, if you're making a pasta salad, you're already doing this. But let's say you're meal prepping for the week, or just, maybe you're making pasta for the next day. This can actually have a potential health benefit. Is it going to make or break, your diet or be the solution for diabetes or something? No, but it is one tool in the toolbox, especially if you want to keep eating more of those grains and pastas that you love. So cooking and cooling pastas creates this I can't think of the right word, but it's called retrogradation, which means some of the starches, so pasta is predominantly a starch, it will turn some of that really starchy food, which our bodies can digest really readily and can potentially lead to higher blood sugar. It turns some of those starches into resistant starches. Resistant meaning it resists digestion. So if we're not digesting it, our body's kind of treating it like fiber, and it can kind of keep the digestion of it nice and slow. So it's potentially not leading to these, blood sugar spikes are normal, but it can kind of keep it much more level and you'll feel a lot better. And just fiber is amazing to begin with. So that's really great for our digestion and all the microbes in there. So cooking and cooling pasta, and this goes for other starches too, like rice and beans and potatoes. So this cooking and cooling concept, it's something we're kind of studying more about as a potential way to help you eat more pasta and have a health benefit from it. Okay, so I'm going to do another poll question really quickly. So this is about which type of pasta. Oops, I'm still sharing the other one somehow. There we go. Okay, let me launch this one. So which type of pasta do you buy most often? Is it going to be regular dried, regular fresh? So you're going to buy that in like the fresh department, like in the deli. Whole grain, a bean based, so things like chickpea, lentil, or edamame pasta. Other types of gluten free, which could include rice or corn, or some veggie blends that we sell. And then maybe you mix it up depending on the meal. I'll let this one go for a little bit longer because there are so many pasta varieties out there nowadays. All right, I still see some people voting. It's kind of going where I thought it would. All right, I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. So predominantly almost 70% of people are buying that regular white dried pasta, which hopefully my next slide is going to give you some confidence with the decision. Not a lot of people, one person picked regular fresh. I will say my family loves fresh pasta. I do not. I don't like it at all. I am a dried pasta through and through. And I've like taken classes to learn how to make fresh pasta. It's not for me. One person on our class loves it, and I'm happy for you. Whole grain pastas, we've got a good portion of people. The bean-based pastas, we have some, as well as the other gluten-free. And then a good portion of people mix it up, and that's great too. I tend to fall in that I mix it up. I like a lot of the bean-based, but growing up, we ate a lot of that white dried pasta, and that's perfectly fine too. All right, so let's compare some pastas. And this is something when we do store tours in our stores, I like to show like everybody. So we'll each pick up a different type of pasta, whether it be the bean or the whole grain or the white pasta, and we compare them for certain nutrients like calories, fiber, total carbs, and protein. And we're typically shocked, happily, by some of the results. So let's compare. Hopefully, it'll keep clicking. Okay, so brand one, and I will show you what the brands are. Brand one has 200 calories, 42 grams of carbs, two of which are fiber. So 40 grams of carbs in a meal is really okay. That's a perfectly okay amount of carbs in a meal. And 7 grams of protein, which is a pretty good amount of protein. Brand two, little less calories, so 190, 38 grams of carbs, 10 grams of protein, and 5 grams of fiber. Brand three, 180, so even less, 40 grams, but a little bit more carb from the other one, 7 grams of protein and 6 grams of fiber. Brand four, 190, 33 grams of carbs, 15 grams of protein, and 3 grams of fiber. And I can't see this beyond my picture. Brand 5 has 190, so very similar to others, 41 grams of carbs, 6 grams of protein, and 2 grams of fiber. So hopefully looking at these, like maybe you have a vision in your mind of which one is which. Maybe you don't, and that's perfectly okay. Looking at these though, they are very, very similar, and hopefully that's something you'll start to notice. Brand one is our regular white pasta. So even a white pasta, it's still gonna have 2 grams of fiber, it's still gonna have 7 grams of protein. And then for the most part, you're not eating this alone. So you might be adding a protein food, you may be adding some vegetables, so you're adding some foods to it. Brand two, so I know this is not a giant brand, but this one is one of my favorite pastas. I love Barilla. This is one of their lines that's a protein plus, but I do want to show you it's not the only way to get protein. What this one is it's a combination of wheat, but also beans. They used to have eggs in the Barilla Protein Plus, but it is now egg free. So that's great for people who are vegan or have egg allergies. So again, a good ratio of protein and fiber there. Brand three is going to be our whole wheat, whole grain version. So 180 calories, again, so a little bit lower. It still has, I mean, it has more fiber than the other one, than the Protein Plus, and nearly as much protein. And again, you're often adding things. And I will say, I'm not a whole wheat pasta person. It's just not how I was raised. However, I do really like our whole wheat version. It's very good, especially the rotini. Then this is our Nature's Promise. This is our spaghetti, which is a red lentil pasta. So just, dried red lentil flour. It has a good amount of protein there with 15 grams. I'm actually shocked that the fiber is not higher. I don't know about that. Red lentils, compared to some other types of lentils and beans, are a little lower in fiber, so I guess it makes sense. But still, 3 grams of fiber, pretty good. And then our final one is going to be, this is our brown rice pasta. So maybe you don't like beans and that's okay. But this one has 6 grams of protein and 2 grams of fiber. Very similar to the white pasta version. Most rice pastas don't have a ton of fiber, so it's about the same. So this, again, just to kind of showcase how similar the versions are. And if you really, at the end of the day, love a white pasta and you know you're going to add some vegetables and maybe you have a side salad and you're going to have some lean proteins with it, knowing that if that's the texture and the taste you're used to and that you enjoy, think about making sure you're cooking it al dente and all those things. But truly, whatever version makes sense for you and your family, they all make sense. They're all great options. So hopefully, and of course, you'll get these slides with the comparison, but I love them all and will utilize them in different applications. So I like doing a comparison like this. It looks a little different when we do it in person, but virtually I think it looked okay. So we have some recipe inspiration. Lots. I mean, there are so many pasta recipes on Savory. I have six. There's a million more. So make sure if you're ever looking for pasta inspiration, you go to Savory. But of course, I do want to, we touched on this a little, but how to cook pasta. I'm going to kind of quickly go through these with some key points. When you're cooking pasta, especially to make sure it doesn't stick, you want to use a way bigger pot than you envision needing. I'm very bad at this, but this is the recommendation. If you're cooking a pound of pasta, you want 4 to 6 quarts of water. Like you want it to be swimming in that water. Of course, this water allows the pasta to cook evenly and to not stick to each other. And of course, you're going to bring it to a full rolling boil with a lid that'll boil faster. You add the pasta, stir it around, and allow it to come back to a boil. As soon as it does come to a boil, this is actually when you want to add that salt. Salt can actually help it come to a boil faster, but a lot of things I saw, this is when it recommended adding the salt. And it does say a generous sprinkling of salt. Of course, depending on your health needs, maybe you're not going to add that generous sprinkle, but it does add flavor to the pasta because, again, it doesn't have any salt to begin with. It adds flavor, but it also helps prevent it from sticking. And I will say here, do not add oil to your pasta water. It is very inauthentic, but also it doesn't help it prevent from sticking the pasta, but what it does prevent is the sauce from sticking to your pasta. So really, and you're adding oil that you really don't need at that point. If you want to add oil after it's cooked, great. That can help prevent it from sticking, but it'll prevent any sauce from sticking to your pasta, which you don't want. You want some of that starchiness to help that sauce stick to it. Continuously stir, give it a gentle stir every once in a while to prevent those noodles from sticking together. Follow those package directions. Again, especially if you are adding this to something that's going to continue cooking, like maybe you're going to then bake the pasta, like a baked ziti or something. You definitely want to undercook that pasta so it's not super overcooked by the time it bakes, but definitely follow the recipe or the package directions for that. Especially, it'll call out what al dente means. Of course, I like taking pieces out throughout the cooking process to see if it's cooked to my liking, because truly we all prefer a certain, like I like mine really al dente. So certainly you'll get used to what your cooking preferences are with pasta. You'll see some people throw it at the wall. You don't have to do that. You can just give it a taste. If it's still a little too crunchy for you, let it cook for another minute or so. And of course, drain the pasta immediately and then continue doing. If you're going to use a sauce, you want that sauce to be ready and heated right away. Some sauces recommend reserving some pasta water because some of that starchiness will really help thicken your pasta sauces. So make sure you're following whatever your directions are. I'm not going to go through these fully because it will be in the slides, but this is from Old Ways, which they have a lot of great resources about Mediterranean, but also other cultural diet plans. And it's a great resource about what to use that pasta shape for. So if it's a long strand pasta, they recommend, tomato sauce or carbonara or whatever it is, or like a peanut sauce if you're making some other type of dish. Of course, this is your pasta. If you want whatever on top of it, it doesn't matter what the recommendation is. Because you'll see here with like the tiny pastas, they recommend adding it into broths or soups. But you know what? Like I eat that as a pasta by itself too. So whatever you enjoy, but I thought this was a nice little resource here. Oops, I went too fast. It also kind of gives other recommendations about alternative pastas, but then also filled pastas, which we had so much to talk about today. I didn't even talk about filled pastas like tortellini and ravioli, but lots of great options here as well. And it reminds you to not overcook the pasta at the end. Again, so much pasta inspiration on Savory. They have a lot leftover pasta bake. I've made this pasta with broccoli pesto before. So delicious. Again, pasta is a vehicle for veggies. So such a great way to add some veggies. Same with the pasta with eggplant sausage ragu. I don't even like eggplant, and that one sounds really delicious. A Caesar pasta salad. I made something like this years ago, but this one has romaine, which is really fun, but then chickpeas as well. So you're getting other types of protein and fiber from the beans. This one looks like something I would really enjoy, the rigatoni with sausage, peppers, and zucchini. again, I'm going to make this one because it looks so, so good. And then I thought this was a cute idea. It's butter chickpea pasta. So butter chicken, super popular food. You could probably make this with chicken if you do want to eat chicken, but this is a nice vegetarian option as well. So that I had never seen that recipe before on our website, so I wanted to share that one as well. So, some takeaways for today. So, pasta is best cooked al dente for both texture and health. Again, we have, it keeps us fuller for longer. It acts a little bit more like a fiber when we're undercooking it or cooking and cooling it and eating it at another time. Pasta is a great vehicle for those veggies and lean protein. So, remembering that pasta is not just this indulgent food. Like, yes, sometimes we go out to restaurants and they serve us an entire pound with a super creamy sauce. Yes, that is a more indulgent food. But when we're cooking at home and adding our own foods to it, it is such an amazing vehicle for other healthy foods. And eat the pasta variety you enjoy. If you don't like whole wheat pasta, that is okay. You do not have to eat it if it doesn't make sense for you. Enjoy the variety you want in moderation, watching your portions, and then again, adding all of those other healthy foods to it. And make sure you tune in. We still have a lot of great classes in October. Tomorrow, Shayna and I will be talking all about boo bags, which is still a new concept to me, but we'll talk about Halloween. We got each other some fun things that we'll chat through. So that's tomorrow at 9. And then Monday, of course, our flyer to fork. If you're looking for some meal inspiration for the week as we get closer to Halloween, make sure you tune in there as well. And you can register for both October and November classes are on there too. But I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I will get to our questions. But thank you and take care.